Horrifying acts of violence are now expected from the Islamic extremist group ISIS. But as an ISIS fighter gagged and bound the hands of a 12-year-old girl to rape her, he paused to tell her, "This isn't a sin." The New York Times of August 13th, 2015 describes the ISIS fighter praying over the girl before he raped her, and then again when he was finished, ending with acts of religious devotion. The terrorist organization has been recruiting new members using a horrifying rhetorical strategy that the New York Times article calls the theology of rape. Using this strategy, male recruits are told that the systematic rape of women and young girls is not only acceptable, but encouraged by the Quran. And they're promised that if they join ISIS, their devastating acts will not only be forgiven, but rewarded by Allah. In recent years, the United Nations has put greater emphasis on trying to understand the role of rape in modern warfare. CNN of March 27, 2015 explains, Al-Qaeda used to recruit members face-to-face, but ISIS is a slick, modern machine that has capitalized on a distorted interpretation of Islam, and global authorities just can't compete. The theology of rape is a unique rhetorical tool and one that deserves immediate attention, warranting the research question: how does ISIS's theology of rape use godly inspiration rhetoric to advance religious extremism? To answer, we will use Brian T. Kaler's article, Accounting for the Divine, examining claims of God's inspiration, published in the 2011 Journal of Communication and Religion. Kaler examines the role that godly inspiration plays with religious rhetoric, or what happens when a rhetor believes his message was inspired by God, making it a valuable model to analyze how ISIS uses the theology of rape to recruit new members. We will first analyze the model, second, apply it to the theology of rape, and finally, draw implications about a rhetorical process that promises heavenly rewards in exchange for committing some of the most gruesome acts imaginable. While we can't study God, Kaler argues it's vital to understand how the belief in God can provide inspiration for rhetoric, and how God is viewed as an audience member that will judge the speaker and message. Kaler argues that godly inspiration influences religious rhetoric using three tenets. First, motivation for the message. Second, creation of the message. And finally, evaluation of the message. First, godly inspiration provides motivation for the message. Kaler explains, the rhetor believes that he or she has been spoken to by God and told what God desires. Kaler notes, most rhetors see themselves as Moses in front of the burning bush. God has called upon them to go and deliver a specific message. Second, the rhetor believes that God helps craft and deliver the message. God provides the words and will listen to make sure they're enacted correctly. God also serves as the most important audience member, because the speaker's message must be tailored to please the will of God, just like a traditional public speaker might tweak his or her message to appeal to a specific audience. Finally, the writer believes that God helps judge how well the message was carried out. Even if the speaker fails, for example, and is criticized by the public or media, he or she finds comfort in the belief that God is the final judge and will be pleased with the outcome. Kaler notes, the belief that God is pleased is perhaps the most influential aspect of self-persuasion. Now that we analyzed Kaler's model, we can apply it to the theology of rape. First, ISIS claims that rape and sexual slavery have been requested by Allah. The New York Times interviewed 21 women and children survivors from the ISIS camps, all of whom claimed to be sold off of auction blocks in warehouses. Their stories confirm, before and after being raped, their attackers prayed and vowed, "This isn't a sin," believing that their devastating acts had been requested by Allah. Furthermore, in a video released by ISIS, one extremist asserts, "Today is the female sex slave market day, which has been ordained." This reinforces sexual slavery as being ordered by Allah, fulfilling Kaler's first tenet. Second, ISIS keeps Allah central to the rhetorical process that spreads the theology of rape. ISIS tells recruits that Allah wants his will enacted correctly. The aforementioned New York Times article explains, over 5,000 Yazidi women and children were abducted last year, and over 3,000 are still captive. The Yazidi minority are captured and sold into sexual slavery because they're deemed as religiously inferior. ISIS claims that it's okay to rape certain women, specifically Christians and Jews, because they don't practice Islam, and this would help them from being unclean. By enacting God's will, recruits are taught that they'll be brought closer to eternal salvation, fulfilling Kaler's second tenet. Finally, although the rest of the world finds rape and sexual slavery inexcusable, ISIS tells recruits that external criticism is irrelevant. The previously mentioned New York Times goes on to tell the story of a girl that continuously told her rapist, "What you're doing to me is wrong and it will not bring you closer to God." But he didn't believe her. Ultimately, he didn't believe her because he was under the influence that although the rest of the globe was frowning upon what he was doing, God is the final judge, fulfilling Kaler's third tenet. Now that we have applied Kaler's model to the theology of rape, we can return to the research question. How does ISIS's theology of rape use godly inspiration rhetoric to advance religious extremism? ISIS is able to advance extremism by rhetorically shifting the focus away from acts of violence and onto the perceived will of Allah. Because Allah plays a key role in the rhetorical process, it bonds ISIS recruits and makes them feel part of a heavenly mission. This can be explored through two implications. First, although ISIS is responsible for spreading the theology of rape, we have become complacent when it comes to rape in modern warfare, oftentimes believing that it's an unavoidable part of conflict. But as Harvard political scientist Dara K. Cohen told Slate magazine on August 15, 2015, systematic rape by terrorist organizations cannot be dismissed as just a part of war. In fact, Dr. Cohen analyzed 89 civil wars between 1980 and 2009. She found that only 18 had widespread reports of rape. And a 2012 study by the Peace Research Institute of Oslo found that 72% of African conflicts had no record of rape at all. These results serve as a chilling reminder. As long as we see rape as unavoidable, we will fail to stop it. Second, like most great scholars, Kaler's article reveals his extensive review of literature on religious rhetoric, and understandably so. He was alarmed to find that his study was the first rhetorical analysis to examine how godly inspiration influenced religious rhetoric, which is terrifying. Rhetorical scholars argue that motivation plays a key role with persuasion. So how can the global community combat ISIS or any other group motivated by godly inspiration if we don't incorporate extremist motivation into our response plans? And this was tragically seen with the attacks in Paris. Foreign Policy of November 17, 2015 reported, ISIS took responsibility for over 129 lives and countless people that were injured and maimed. As long as religious extremism continues, it becomes even more pertinent that scholars do more research on godly inspiration, not only so that we can understand its function, but perhaps, more importantly, how to fight it. Today, we outlined Kaler's model on godly inspiration, applied it to the theology of rape, and drew critical implications. The influence of ISIS continues to grow, but maybe, by taking a closer look at godly inspiration, we can play an active role in restoring peace.